So this is week 3 of the premiere of Monstruo. And what a week it is. I think this is one of the most interesting, in my point of view, stories of the entire catalog. It's definitely one of my favorites. Before we get into it, here is Jack Luna. Say hello, Jack.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
When we started on this adventure, we didn't know what was going to transpire. We didn't know what the end result was going to be. We just had images of what we were going to do. I know I did. When I first envisioned this project, I mean, it was quite a while before you got on board, Jack.
Yeah, I had no idea. We didn't even know each other. So one of the first conversations that we had, boom, immediately you spoke of this, and I was very interested. And even more so once I saw the cases you were going to go after. And this wouldn't have been one that I would have picked personally, but it turned out to be, like you said, one of my favorites, actually.
I think it's fascinating because this is a story that I originally wanted to tell on my show, on Sword and Scale, and I couldn't figure out a way to do it. There was just nothing available about it. There was such a small amount of information. There's obviously no video. There was no audio. And as you know, my show is very clip-based. It's very based on media. And this is a story that took place literally on the other side of the planet in a language that none of my listeners speak mostly. And there was just not enough information available. But I really wanted to tell it because it's such a disturbing story on so many levels. And it has such rich visuals that you can imagine that go with it, that just color the story so profoundly.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I think you might have misspoke there. You said it in a language that none of your listeners might understand. It is in English still, right? It's in Australia. But it's a case. Like, it's a case from another part of the world where they might not be able to relate to.
What I was going to say is, the reason I said that is because when I started to look up the story, the majority of news coverage on the story was from Asian-speaking countries.
Oh,
there was
I see.
Literally nothing available in any sort of English media other than just a really short couple of paragraphs of a blurb of this happened, and that was it.
Right. You know, I get you now. Yeah, and I looked into it a bit myself, and it was very difficult to find anything. So that's why we told the story the way we did, and that's why it works with Monstruo. Any parts that are missing, as long as we have the skeleton of it, we can flesh it out. And there are many opportunities within this story to have done so.
And this is the first story that we told where it was after sort of you and I got together and we started talking about what we were going to do. Early on, you weren't involved in the very, very early parts of this, because the idea of it came many, many months prior. It actually came before the last podcast I started called This Is War. And we just put it on the back burner and didn't really think about it, but we sort of had some parts of it fleshed out, some ideas, and we started even writing episode 1 before we brought you along, and we actually had a different writer originally, Evan Ziegelman, who has been introduced on this program, writing the first episode, and he actually wrote parts of this episode too before moving on and bringing you along, and also Tyler Bell.
That's right. Yeah. Evan and I were working together on this in the beginning. We had kind of parsed out the episodes amongst the two of us. And then he was needed more with Sword and Scale, and I was able to get Tyler Bell, who I had already been working with, to come and help me. And this is the first one that Evan had done quite a bit of it, and then we reworked it between the two of us. So this Chikatilo we ended up going back and doing too, but this is the first one that we started to work on really together. You had done episode 1, Armin Mavis, completely without me at all. I added in a couple of narration points and all that later on, but this is where we really started to take off between just Tyler and myself and you.
And then it gets really weird. It gets weird because we start coming up with amazing new ways to tell stories. I mean, I know we had conversations that were, it sounded like we had probably dropped acid before we had started talking, where we were talking about fourth person narratives and all this crazy shit that it's hard to explain, but it totally made sense to us as storytellers, right?
Yeah. We were going all over the place, and we do it a few times later on. But speaking from the perspective, it goes back to Stephen King again. In Stephen King's The Talisman, and then Part 2, Black House. In the beginning of Black House, he has a crow flying over the entire town, and the crow is giving you what it's seeing. And we wanted to do some weird stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's when we started to really realize that we were going to be able to do something different here. The way that we were speaking to each other, like you said, on acid. I feel like I'm on acid every time I talk to you. It still freaks me out that I'm talking to Mike Boudet. Still, I get a little nervous. My girl's like, what's wrong with you? I'm going to talk to Mike. She's like, oh, you get weird when you talk to Mike.
Well, I think it's I do too. I mean, I think the thing is, like, when you're someone that's creative, you recognize that in other people. And when I first heard your show, Dark Topic, I immediately recognized this guy can tell a story. I mean, this guy understands storytelling. He knows how to put a story together. And the way that we went about telling this story is, to me, one of the most interesting things I mean, I've been involved with. The fact that Marcus Volk, this man who has this sort of very layered past and layered family life and all this history, and then he falls in love with this person, this trans woman, and has to hide that from this part of his past, and is caught between these two worlds. And the whole story starts in a very dark place and ends in the same place that it starts. That's what's I love about this story. You start off in a dumpster.
Yeah, he's already trapped. He's trapped throughout. And I think it's, you just brought up a good point there that I'll bring up later. I believe the term, there's so many terms, I try not to get into trouble. I believe the term for Mayang is actually intersexual. She was born with a penis, identified as a woman. And it's something, I guess, that he was ashamed of because he never told his parents, right? And he, like you said, he has this very layered past. So it's hard to say why, in the end, he does what he's done. What he does, he kills himself, and there could be many reasons for that. He could be ashamed. He could feel true remorse, and it's maybe he's even ashamed. He doesn't want his parents to find out that badly that he was with somebody who's intersexual that he kills himself. I mean, there's a lot of questions left unanswered, obviously, because everybody dies in this story, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. There's more questions ever that in death than there were in life. Mm-hmm. But it truly is fascinating because when you boil it all down, it feels like it's just almost a run-of-the-mill domestic violence story where there's a couple, and it could be a man and a woman, or a woman and a man, and whatever. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But there's the little annoyances, the little things that get under your skin. And I think everyone can relate to that. And that's why it's so fascinating, because the way the story is told is so relatable from any aspect of life. There's always these little things that bother you. There's always these little things that get to you, and they start to annoy you, and they get under your skin. And after a while, if you don't deal with it in a healthy way, in a proper way, your mind starts to go to places that are dark and awful.
Certainly. I mean, we've all been in bad relationships, but there's only a few people, obviously including Marcus Volk, who grabs that kitchen knife and right into her throat while she's speaking. That moment in this episode I felt was really shocking. It's still shocking every time I hear it. The way that Jonathan McMichael, our sound guy, the way that he put that in, it's just like, boom. They're having an argument, and then, my God, the knife is in her throat. Holy shit.
And the way they look at each other after that, the way that's written in terms of they lock eyes like they did when they first met.
Yeah.
In sort of this fascination. And that is, that just gets me when I heard that part. It just,
it's
so powerful.
It is, yeah. It's a true crime of passion, this, clearly, because, he definitely didn't think this out.
Right.
If you hear the story, there's no way he thought this out, because what a mess. What a mess. And the dissection descriptions through this, I mean, some people, who knows how they're going to feel about it, but I felt they were disgusting, clearly, but just how much of a mess he had to deal with. And
literally a mess. Yeah, what a small apartment, and with the looming threat of the neighbors outside smelling this thing coming from this apartment.
Yeah. in stories like this where, I'm used to dealing with serial killers and there's all kinds of content and things that you can grab from. But in a story like this, where he's trapped in this apartment dealing with this, and he's trapped in that dumpster, the walls are closing in. It feels like you get that sense that he's completely screwed himself here. And the small mundane details become ultra compelling in cases like this. You want to know what brand of cleaning chemical he's using, or, what's on the radio. And there was a lot of storytelling that we didn't do anything on the radio. I say that because when I'm listening to the radio and I'm driving in a snowstorm, if like a song like Baby Love comes on, I turn it off because I don't want to fucking die to a song like that. Baby Love!
That's always the end scene. It's always the end scene of, some horrible accident. It's so true. The thing about that part at the end where he knows that there's no way out. I don't want to say, the word empathy is the wrong word because you don't really empathize with Marcus Volk, but you kind of feel as trapped as he does at that point, don't you?
Yeah.
It almost like you feel like what that feels like. Like everybody's had to go to school the next day after they screwed around and they didn't study for the final. Yeah. And they know they're going to get there and the first question they're going to read it and it's going to be like, oh, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
So you know what that feeling feels like, but imagine that times like 100 and you have to now kill yourself because there's no other way out. It's not empathy, but there should be a word for it.
Yeah, you can put yourself in that place. I'm sure there is a word for it, but I'm struggling to find it myself. I mean, and he has trouble even killing himself. We put that through. Like he doesn't cut himself deep enough the first time, and when he finally decides to do it, he overdoes it. Because he's hyped himself up so much, almost decapitates himself. So I mean, true remorse. Suicide in a situation like that, to me, it shows true remorse or regret, true regret. Cowardice, some say, whatever, but you don't know until you're in that situation what it's really like. And we tried to really put the listener through that bargaining. He wasn't even bargaining with himself. He was just trying to hype himself up to actually get the job done.
I think Bill Maher got in trouble for saying that, suicide bombings or whatever weren't cowardly.
Right.
But there's nothing cowardly about sticking a blade in your throat. I mean,
there isn't. No.
I think there's a lot more cowardice in just being arrested and going to jail. I think to actually off yourself in such a horrendous and physical way it's unthinkable, and that the horror behind that is unthinkable, and that's what makes this show so powerful. It's so, you put yourself in those shoes, and it's like, oh God, what would I do?
Right, and you almost can't even say he committed suicide. It's almost more apt to say that he murdered himself. You know?
Yeah.
He murdered himself in that dumpster. It's a nasty way to go. And another thing, even though he murdered my Yang, and we're not sure about what he was thinking, but this is what Monstruo is about, like telling the story in the spaces that we're not sure what actually went on. He kills her, and we have him being haunted by her almost immediately.
Yeah.
Her voice is ringing in his mind immediately after he's done it. And throughout, and I felt that was a very creepy way to go about it, and that's what we do, I guess.
I think it's very human to think that way. I mean, and again, I'm bringing up really mundane sort of like examples, but when you say the wrong thing to someone and you feel bad about it, and then you go to bed that night and you're thinking about it and you can't go to sleep because you keep thinking about it. Like that kind of shit is universal, and again, to multiply that times 10 or 100 or 1,000 or infinity, and you figure out what that must have felt like when you did the unthinkable.
Yeah.
Those voices have got to be going through your head, whether they're ghosts or ghosts of your own creation, they're gonna be there.
Yeah, we tried to make it sound real, but either way, like you said, it was probably there. All we can do is try to put ourselves in their shoes. And I know if I was in that position, you have the body there right in front of you. She's looking at you. Like he pushes her face away at one point, right? And that was very symbolic. He didn't want to look her in the eye any longer. He's having these dreams he's slipping into, and she's in them, right? It's just all so fucked up. And I feel like that's the way it would have went for me if I murdered my fucking girlfriend, which I would never even consider doing. It's crazy.
Well, don't do that.
No.
Don't do that. We got many more episodes to come. Yeah. And we're gonna come back next week with another shocker. I think it's a fantastic.
Oh, another great one. They keep coming.
We're not going to tell you what it's about because secrets. But stay tuned. And how about you, Jack? You got anything else to say?
No, I don't have anything else to say. I really did enjoy working on this episode with Tyler Bell. I enjoyed everything about it. I mean, as horrible as it is, I really felt this one was very immersive. And like we've already said, I really felt like the walls closing in when I listened back to it and all that. And I think that we nailed it as close as we possibly can with as little information as we had. And I hope that everybody who listened and enjoyed it, and that's in quotes, but experienced it the way that we hope that you would.
Yeah, with really good headphones.
Yes.
All right, guys.
You need them.
All right. So stay tuned and listen to episode 4 coming up this Wednesday.
Monstruo is an Incongruity Media production. The original soundtrack to Monstruo is available on iTunes, Apple Music, Amazon, Google Play, Spotify, and just about everywhere else you listen to music. Merch, such as t-shirts, tank tops, and caps, can be ordered at monstruopodcast.com. If you like the show, please subscribe and leave us a positive review.